Hello, Americans, students, and parents. If you are under 18, please, you know, watch this with your parents because it's about serious things. For example, serious and powerful things, including things that are stronger than ourselves. They could never be tied to perception, awareness, consciousness, strength, while being the identity that is really the possession of the order of the finite, the smallest finite things that we could grapple with. And the most that we could use our strength for, even grouped and even together. Only one value system, only one value progression, better than perfect, is only increasing. And the languages are more probably increasingly demonstrably designed to teach this, the way languages were designed to be taught. And this is where and is how the sciences share an identity. I'm going to go to open up another YouTube page because I want to comment on my own page here to put a link because I want to put a link below this post. So now I have to go here, videos, live. Right now okay, so I'm going to put a link here because this is regarding. There's no comments there. Now, okay. I was echo from that. So that when I say hard, that's what I mean by that, hyper hard. And so, per this definition of programming, see, most people won't give away their programming; they keep it highly secret. But some things are more important than anything else. And where and how. For example, everything is about the simultaneous, what is actually simultaneously recorded true always, not denying the slightest exceptions. But you have to know where and how. People have been lying to us. People don't know how to tell the truth, and the people that are telling the truth, for example, all along Two Rod Highway and the land behind it had people that were influenced by like on off Central Connecticut State University before the World Trade Center attack, during the World Trade Center attack, and since. Defenses of names of campuses, they're not even living. See, but forging names, switching names, planting things, how they've been getting away with it is what is actually hyper recorded. Is between campuses, on off campuses, rolls with a whole bunch of juxtaposed natures of collusions with a singular breaching method, syntactical possession of people speaking for, formally, informally, and other with this as this other involved with motivations, narratives, for example, where and how the breaching method applied, where and how it designed the suburbs before our founding parents were born. A part of that system that was databases oriented onto all locations, complete possession of the human identity of value/value progression. The only way after they didn't take out to nature, it knew the breaching method, a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise. There are needs and means to call this, and as a means to show a hyper economy means to hyper stabilize and heal modern economies where they were tactically forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded without realizing that defenses of themselves as identities syntactically, as individuals grouped and together, tactically other alter through systems as identities, hyper-additionally, not as ground, but as ground as other systems. So nature has continued and knew the breaching method, a hyper-archetypal predicate acts delivery system method / hyper-predicate acts delivery system method, if you will. And if we could use this method of hard to explain how slavery is a hard thing, for example, that what does that does not allow forgiveness is not to dilute the conversation. See, that's what shock and awe people know racism is used for, to keep people blaming other things other than ourselves and pretending not to realize. That's one of the things that is being sensed by everyone. How they got away with it. A whole bunch of people on off UPS when I was a kid. And then when I was older, they have roles with the intelligence community. A whole bunch of but see, when we explain this, we can't leave out the breaching method. But this method effectively, when it was sustaining things, it was consciously sustaining uses of the sciences abridged, uses of a special difference apart from logic, speaking for what is hard, speaking for what is finite, true always, not denying the slightest exception, not valuing it denied. So this backed into defense styles, to use boxing as a metaphor, martial arts and wrestling are become inseparable from the metaphor. The sciences share an identity, but in other words, everyone's been backed into the style, and the fighter, the breaching method, other words are in its place. Everyone's blaming other things, others, or selves. And this is relevant because this is where and how it is discernible. Since me and everyone of the youngest age was born, there are people stacking illusions into databases and exploiting them at other locations. And where and how actually people are approaching others and pretending to be honest or not. All investigations, all investigators, and all perception of people A through Z, there is the phenomenon of how it is recorded, how they were motivated to blame other things, others, and or selves, per a method that is also between. Like I walked one time, like didn't even one time I walked by a Joshua Schumach's mother, and I was only pleasant to her, but so she's involved with I didn't know all the names of the people. There's executive branch. There are people with the name O'Brien and the executive branch that were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed when I was in like second grade. But roles being differentially criminally foreign influenced and valuing how it used to be that way, and where and how people communicate other when simultaneously nonverbal communications, verbal communications, and hypercommunication are connected, where and how everyone's forced to speak through others. No one's allowed to have, no one can, in other words, and have privacy. And they're pretending they want and need privacy and that they are for the privacy, the interbranch. Before the pandemic, there's Officer Jerry Miller on Facebook, or someone impersonating an officer. But the officers in the police department, Weathersfield Police Department, and the state police, and forensics locations, they have the phenomenon of means to observe their roles of wire crimes and mail crimes, and then wants to hide that, where and how the investigators, and vetting identities and their uses of that. In other words, they have complete possession of the sense and sensibilities, use Jane Austen's phrase, of each age of fact-cheaping nature, over little boys and over little girls sickly distinctly, and over their parents sickly distinctly. And this is relevant to where and to how criminally foreign influenced readings of statutes are criminally foreign influenced readings of the law, of the nature of the law, and of identity simultaneously, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly. And this has not been addressed, where and how having black pupils and whites of eyes alone, for example, acknowledge that, and how there was a breaching method sustained against the Native Americans and against the colonists, sickly distinctly, that had already been sustained against the colonists, which is, which is a real excuse. Only a slave would be a part. There are proofs that the semi-ancients, the early the first semi-ancients, and then the even latter semi-ancients and the ancients couldn't fathom anyone would or could get the entire species volume to be identities that couldn't even remember how to follow the means to reveal positive value, nature, progressions, acts in nature everywhere at once, and or to be able to discern criminal insidiousness natures of positive value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures, of positive value, nature, progression, acts, and natures. And so it is relevant to discern here now the difference between temporary and lasting positive, because this is relevant to where and to how roles as identities as criminal insidiousness natures, including the branches of government. They're not real people, but only voiced through people, backed into that boxing style that was born in retreat. Because of that, it locked to sense. It's an identity of value progression, so value/value progression, three distinct identities of volume. Because where we only have the smallest finite, we are only the smallest finite possession. In other words, we're only the identity that is everything at once. That is the same one that has already been, and that is to come. These three ways, for example, it is discernible. Its identity of volume is hyper invisible, attached to all the invisible but still discernible. Distinct identities of volume as the distinct identities of the grammar of our language/S. See, I tell it best. This method knew that the sciences would have to use knowledge to get over on each age of correlation nature. in defenses of themselves, where it knew that they would have to defend from criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments, where syntactically that would be manifest simultaneously slash hyper simultaneously. So there are people on off Trinity College involved with a Joseph or what's his name, um, Joshua Stryker, and so and Joshua Schumack, and black and white themed people involved with the Mike Roberts and Eric Jensen with the intelligence community on off Trinity College and on off spots next to it that has relevance to the roles timed with distinct but connected natures of organized crime rules and predicate acts methods relevant on off my street time, where and how they have the possessions of names involvements involved with this, and people speaking who this person's alive, and they have these methods of timing illusions. So for first, Tim O'Brien, his brother, confessed, recorded, demonstrated their family, differentially criminally foreign influence, not wanting to be relative, for example, to where and how they're forcing little kids not to use correlation nature's actually inherent active and progressive means. Also three-way simultaneously. See, there are things that the identity that is hyper simultaneous are constantly, and there are things that it is variably. Each of the algebra classes I went to had people involved with federal crimes. Leading up to before that, and these are at different cities, and they were put and with the people that were put in the classes with me. Federal rules of evidence as crimes, as names leading up to the World Trade Center attack, on off the Ninth Circuit Court. It was proven after the attack. Post-dated documents had been post-dated from inside the Ninth Circuit Court right before the attack, shown to panel judges. Post-dated from inside the Ninth Circuit to appear late. That was right before the World Trade Center towers were hit by the two planes and taken out. And then remember, another plane was reported to have gone down in the field. So in other words, they that night there were investigators who had made an exception where we made a pipe bomb when I was a kid, as many kids do, with the kids that went to their called me to go do it, and they were making exceptions, pretending to know me. I think it might have been after they graduated. I think that was after they graduated, because there were also sequence shifting, because in a live progressions of people involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, instances, pretending passions and emotions at locations. Also timed on corners of streets and of schools as people who speak things into records where and how used remotely are time treatments at interbranch locations, not for the reasons they realized, but where and how employed as an application /S as programming. Their responses to the real furtherance and needs to counter, but not understanding properly the real causes of criminal times strangers, people, when you have a whole bunch of strangers kept needing to hide time, the same sequence should find active progressive lies as collusion singular, therefore slash grouped increasingly too, against anyone who tries to use the short words properly. See, these values pretending to be about, quote, vigorous and concise language as the elements of style are not, I forgot, the Essentials of Writing by Strunk and White, a popular book because it makes short and concise rules. But these rules, in other words, this is not how America, in other words, and they have theory regarding linguistics, regarding syntax, regarding identity. Computers work how identity works, which is where and how it is 1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. And we are only an extent of the identity that is hyper-simultaneous. But anywhere it's not complete, I mean, part of its self is its complete identity of relationship to itself. And the only increasing value of that are three only increasingly connected, simultaneously increasing distinct identities of volume, where volume equals value as nature / nature as value. And all parts of the languages individually grouped and together have this identity of relationship and identity of relativity, of a special relativity to the short words we make, for example, and how they got away with denying the significance of people denied their voices and proper uses of their names and of others' names around them when we are kids at each age of fact, cheap, and nature. Now, there is a place called the Institute of Living that is on the campus of Hartford Hospital, but it's interstates and entered countries individually grouped and together. They have roles with investigators, and military, ones with badges, involved through time with courts and police forms and a whole bunch of people tied to mayors, ones from before when I was a baby and right through our lifetimes, other natures of politicians, where and how applied are everyone's victims' reactions and where and how they are simultaneously hyper victims is applied and has been applied. So, for example, Congressman Larson, I don't know if it's really his relative that was in one of the two other people besides myself. So there was four of us in an algebra class when I was in high school. It was also recorded various ways, recorded, I should say, and actually recorded, I should say, because they fabricate between campuses fake things into databases. And this is where and how. In other words, this is conjunctive to the topics treatments in the news, where and how victims / hyper victims are individually grouped into the breaching method is exploiting how identity works. And it's a method that if anyone tries to tell them the breaching method without using people's names, they heard us. People will jump into the conversation, and the reason they dishonestly, not just to say dishonestly or honestly, because there's more there. It's worse. The whole and the motivations narratives. So there were a whole bunch of people tied to a Mike Roberts. One time he asked me to go on to go on a bike for his motorcycle. There are proofs that were trying to take a picture to pretend we were friends. He has rules with some KKK themed, black themed people on off the campuses and on off the state judicial branch offices, and that men and women of the intelligence community through their kids confessed and demonstrated, recorded. There was a Jennifer Kennepicky. I don't know her mother's name. She's one of the ones involved with neighbors of John Maiano, where he made recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He involved his family and a DeMoro family with also a Mr. Abruzzi is one of the ones that was my fifth grade teacher. And there was a sixth grade teacher of a class next to mine, but then they made an exception with a reading class. And that was exploited, because one of the things they do is exploit exceptions and exception nature, where and how the programming as nature, where and how it's one hyper possession over our syntax. And it's better than perfect, and it has the perfect way, and better than perfect because it's the way we adapt too. If we get things wrong, and we have all the strength of cars and industry, and the suburbs are still tactically denatured since before our founders were even born. All exceptions and exception nature regarding how that's justifiable. That is also recorded effectively being and having been applied to roles recorded self-value with databases oriented, increasingly therefore at other locations. So there are a whole bunch of people involved with a Kevin Carone and Mark Carone, who they try they're involved with investigators and people at campuses that make it look like they take a pictures and make it look like you know them. With the people that said they were intimately in a circle with them. And the reason they say those things is because the intelligence community that are the names that are recorded involved with wire crime methods with Wethersfield police. All kinds of falsified police reports where victims in it were collusions also with the sources, with investigators, they're putting fake things down. So they're making people pretend that they're saying things against themselves because they don't put anything in writing. Now, these are also people timed who had roles with spreading illusions with the principal child abusers campus in Wethersfield that through time recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, have roles with some men and women that are KKK themed and interbranch themed, hiding live progressions, and where and how investigators used in the past. This is a method that was sophistication here since before our founders parents were even born. It had measured and maintained a method where it could check. It had needed to check the colonies, the countries that were the remote possession of the colonies, North and South. Slavery had already been entrenched North and South. The counter to the slavery method, the hyper-slavery method that came through the North, was still collusion /S. That's what our founders had to leave slavery entrenched in the North. The Institute of Living was founded on the campus of Harvard Hospital in 1822. It's still associated with the mental health care community. All kinds of predicate acts methods where no one's watching the databases, where and how the motivations to roles with that. Before they pretend it's the instances, it's recorded not. They have roles with the crime scenes / hypercrime scene. But see, this was sophistication here since before our founders were even born. Before former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, was even born, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. His co-defendants, Thaddeus Grabowski, is on-off Fox Connecticut News, involved with 2 Mendez police brothers and others that know my other families of police forms that know my name that I don't know theirs. And these are also roles and natures recorded where and how consciously with criminally foreign influence juxtaposed other motivations. The phrase first responders is being and hasn't been used. The Connecticut news media attached me and others to fake conversations about World Trade Center. So the Joshua Stryker, the night he's trying to pretend there's an exception, I had a conversation with him. There was no exception. And the day before that, that day, is when I didn't see Mike Roberts that night, but that day, Mike Roberts, and I didn't see my neighbor. This is the one, in other words, he used to hang around with my neighbor or whatever, but they had roles with people growing up of the intelligence community. Also, criminally foreign influence with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the relativity of that to where and how people jump into my conversation with other natures and motivations and identity thefts and frauds as people that are also connected to the pattern of more than a dozen police reports falsified through since I was a kid, whereas and how relevant it is recorded, not just against me. There are wire crime methods. This has remorse. In other words, there's a method of identity theft, fraud, slander that has also law treatments, victim predator reactions where they be, oh, this person's guilty or this person. So we're not being able to speak about what came first. We're not speaking about sequence shifts. These same people intercities have been planting fake illusions that were the ones that were on off the World Trade Center in the consent. They even enforced Saudi Arabia to roles with psychology with the other countries individually grouped and together relative to where and to how our countries are shared. You can't entertain what they've entertained with the logic and with their nature and defend and afford defense of syntactically at locations where it counts. So they have roles with violence and they have a Bobby Jean, or that's really involved certain type of, she was abused since she was a kid by people with the medical community involved with various natures of courts that have been entertaining her role. People have been roles all along Route 3 on off the state judicial branch offices with East Hartford locations, New Britain Superior Court, Hartford courts. They are in the background with also private lawyers where relevant is differentially criminally foreign influenced. So differentially criminally foreign influence is also relevant to where we have juxtaposed identities of subject treatments that are being and have been, affected by criminal foreign influences / hypercriminal foreign influences. See, we have a phenomenon of modern countries that pretend that patriotism has been spoken for. Others communicated that for our founders. Then they asked to be communicated for themselves. And that requires, they asked us to communicate about how they had to counter extort the other founders. how they asked us to communicate about how they had to leave slavery entrenched north and south. They asked us to communicate about how roles with things entrenched that couldn't be entertained, that were entertained, could only be countered, thank God, for their humanity named Native Americans. And how their identity as hyper Native American, which is relevant too, because that's the identity that was reassigned other identities as the identities of colonization, already a distinct identity of slavery, not realizing where and how. Each age of correlation nature, each instance could be used, and the timing of it could be used effectively to keep self-valued roles with criminally foreign influence. So the state police forms and the military and the training of the, they call it, training's valuable. So the countries don't have a ground defense, and they're fighting for air defenses while simultaneously not leaving out how the species voices are individually grouped in together, a bridged identity of constitution nature, if you really allow discernment by that, by the method of using what is true always, not denying the slightest detail, not denying the slightest finite thing or nature, thing, not valuing that left out or denied. And see, if we use that method, that nature of truth uses, also they pretend people like they describe people how they, sometimes people tell truth to people that are come up to them with evil and as liars, pretending other, because they know the branches of the government since founding have been communicating. They are aware of their involvements with corruption that can't afford properly discern the revelations that come from knowing that Native Americans, that method, breaching methods is sustained against them, that we know that was a part connected to all parts of colonization individually grouped together, and further how they are countries individually grouped together, involved with the also overt criminal enterprises and private ones our founders also left us to address other. Because those private ones are made up of a whole bunch of victim/hyper victim predators. So UPS has roles with the FBI and with some state police forms and families associated with the Whiting forensics place, that has roles also with predicate acts and predicates on my street, and that involve uses of names near me and everyone else, where how investigations and investigators and their campuses are being and have been used criminally foreign influence, certain type of victim/hyper victim. So they already had that applied, where they had to hide finite details by using all that came before them formally, and hide group details and hide them overall. So that's a certain type of victim predator, A through Z, sickly distinctly, that the breaching method made and makes and keeps everyone relying on other people to think for them. And those people are in the databases putting fake things. They also have ties to economic treatments that are recorded relevant, where and how they have. See, they've been getting away with it because they have the identity of the court at locations, at crime scenes involved criminally with them. And so increasingly criminally, we're the only people that could counter where fact, cheap, and nature-oriented difference is. become manifest. And or also where the positive, oh, I'm only trying to help though. In other words, this is a certain type of victim predator that has been employed. So we have to, this is why we need to make a hyper economy. Until we have the syntax of humanity unabridged, no one has the right to speak for why and how they have nuclear weapons, why and how they have needs to go to war, why and how, and the only reason they're getting away with it is how exception nature is being and haven't been used by people on pretend. Either they change our words if you don't do this, otherwise they blame other things other than themselves for what nature is demonstrating. The breaching method, singular, is inseparable from all parts of American history, individually grouped in together. So I just saw, I don't know how to put the post on here. I'll put it in the comments after, because people don't press the button to watch on the information section below YouTube videos. There's an information button, and you can press that and it will open up and you can read more. Also, you could press just the name of the person below the video, and you can go right to their YouTube channel. And then there are different tabs on there: videos, playlists. Has anyone seen Mike Tyson's Mysteries? I have the whole thing recorded, and now I can't find the channel it's on. It's AS. As it's something Adult Swim. It's like cartoons for adults, but it's like, there are swears in it now, but relevant is where and how distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously each of the sciences departments are being and haven't been used, with the name standing there. And this is where and how, again, it employed when we're kids, instances where people make hyper confessions and demonstrations. So these are people involved with some KKK themed and black themed. Like there's a Mark Violet. These are also people with Yukon themed, these lawyers and such. There are Trantolo and Trantolo. So that day we went to they took us to they told me to go to a Mike Roberts' house and make a bomb. I watched them make the bomb, the pipe bomb. I had done that before too. They also had a Joe DeMoro prompt my neighbor to rolls with that or whatever. See, but from the beginning, it's important to understand how the O'Brien brothers recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles from other classrooms. I never had them in a class with me, and was the only time I saw them on a campus. They wanted me to go like that with they were playing pretend horses, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't make fun of them or anything like that. I just was figured, okay, I don't want to do that, and I would just watch the people. And I heard after I got out of the elementary school that people were complaining about that. See, there were people in the background. There were girls. There was a girl there, but I didn't know her. She was already in conversation with the kid that was already involved criminally for an influence, consciously getting in the way of me demonstrating the relativity that is only increasingly value of understanding where and how Native Americans are sickly distinctly victims from ourselves and from Black people. You're labeled Black, you're labeled white the second that you know that person's that formal body is still criminally foreign influence, simultaneously tactically delusions raw. If you have American history and correlation nature is actually interactive progressive means. And what we all and know the difference between what we know is true always, not denying the slightest exception, not denying the value of exception nature. For example, the value of how branches value themselves criminally foreign influenced, and then say that, communicate, but don't realize the significance of it. It's relative to this, not because they had someone do that what I did. I made a bomb before myself. Not, I mean, I made one and put it in a hole when I was a kid. Firework, like with a wick. But that was after, and that was also tied to one of the men and women on off the spots next to the state capitol. That was that Subby Bajerio. Only conversation I had, one exception. He asked me if I wanted a coat for $20 on the side of the high school. Well, I never saw him inside the high school in my life. Subby Bajerio. He's a little skinny kid. Now he's a guy with kids. I don't even know the names of them. They know my name. He's got the kids involved because with the intelligence community, they have him involved. But differentially, too, they have these are names involved with the other countries, overt criminal enterprises and falsified police reports, timed. Natures of timed identity thefts, frauds, slams are relevant. Names further involved with the principal child defenders campus at the time and further. And there are people on Twitter further with the FBI associated with the Ian. I never had a conversation with Ian in my life. There's an Ian with Middletown locations involved with the intelligence community, on off medical locations, involved with the names further. Bob Chase is one of the ones involved with the whiting forensics, further crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught and online. And since, and with the principal child defender. Now they also have doctors and various natures of courts personally tied to them personally with Subby Bajerio and his friends, people tied to him. They also barely know. I saw him in the presence of Jeremy Grohl before. They made confessions. Their roles next to the state, next to the community center, with people on off that in that park, that and an entrance on the side there, into a dead end street there, is involved with people. When there is exceptions and other people bring up more names into it, they exploit that too. So it's necessary to deal with comes first, and their roles with the mayors, with three corners on Church Street, and involved, and with past filming illusions, and or simultaneously other ways having people locked into not being able to afford, understood what really unfolded, and how a whole bunch of people with a Mr. Neville were attaching me to who was an English class teacher I had in middle school, attached me to fake ties, fake natures of ties to other people, with people involved with the class placements. There was a Rick C.M. Faglione placed in my class who was involved with medical community, that was attaching little kids through time and their families to fake conversations with themselves, fake ties to themselves completely, and whole fake conversations with themselves and their family members about about all kinds of things like natures of organized crime where they have roles with federal criminals before they get caught involved with it, and with remote uses of like union locations, job sites. This is where and how it's a method of keeping finite, active, progressive lives self-valued by other. This is where and how they have the intelligence communities, males and females, communicate sickly distinctly and non-distinctly. How so we can discern how they are three volumes where value is nature / nature is value. One of the ways, like three as one volume size, but the sequence shifts at locations. They're involved with communications that is sabotaging people's communications so they can get away with it later, where and how it becomes relevant and relative. So I don't know what Christopher Cullen, he sought me out to pretend other. As when before he did that 2 times, he was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with various natures of federal evidences, crimes, natures of identity theft, fraud, slander, as that associated with that, and timed uses of it with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people on off campuses that have been stacking fake things in the databases through time. Now, that's one of the names that was brought up by Joe Aiello, who is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, and confirmed, involved with various natures of federal crimes, including with guns and with poisons and with other methods of hurting people, including as the roles with the falsified police reports, identity thefts and frauds and slanders, and fake. I never saw Mark Violet on a campus in my life. He made an exception, and real quick, because he rolls with some private school, public school people involved with the intelligence community. And it's not personal. They need to pretend this because they can't follow mandated law locations or online. They have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and of exceptions and of exception nature. Like, for example, that CNN did a good job reporting where and how it's just too expensive for them to allow the Constitution unabridged regarding what we say. Many pray. See, but those exceptions. So former police chief Cintron has roles with Peruta families that say they're from Russia that were demonstrated, confessed, recorded, involved with timed, criminally conscious, criminally foreign influenced, and tactically delusions wrought uses of a former Mayor Gold and his family involved with identity theft and frauds against me, trying to make fake exceptions to know me, pretending passions and emotions behind my back to my teachers, made a fake exception, doing that, you running up to me yelling. Now, the further with the principal child defenders campus, there are names associated with that were brought up in the confessions to me. They use the crime method of pretending they don't understand people after they tell people to hold, and then they have someone else say something that was not real, like make up things, and they keep bringing up more things before the person can speak. And now they brought up a whole bunch of different things. So I still have not been responded to by the people involved with the schools in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield. I'm asking now for Rocky Hill here. I haven't had a chance to do it there yet. But these are people also involved with predicate acts methods on my street as people that scream things out that will never in a million years get on paper. So they have to make the exceptions and exception nature where relevant. The courts have been planting evidences and the police forms at the crime scenes roles. They have a whole bunch of people tied to the corner of Fairlane Drive and Carriage Hill Drive and Carriage Hill Drive and Griswold Street had my names used with them. Criminally foreign influence ways, delusions wrought ways, and relevant applications of that. And I don't even know them. So, and these are people that were involved with 2 speech class teachers I had in high school who are involved with drugs and medicines crimes with little kids as police forms. There's a Dillon family, a guy who said he was the partner of him. He was also involved that way with abuses of a girl that was in my class and her brother. Also, that differentially though, from how with the other interbranch near me, and each ages of themselves. I never saw a Smith brother on a campus in my life. I don't know what campus they went to, if they were homeschooled. There are people associated with them on off the where the Weathersfield police station is now, where it used to be. That know my name, that I don't know theirs. On off shopping centers, big box stores and stuff since before they were there. Have roles with these names with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. With the middle school kids that aren't even in the same classes, involved with the people that are in the same classes. They never have communication to put in fake things. When they have communication, they exploit that exception too. They're lying about their motivation. There are criminally foreign influence class placements. People at Central Connecticut State University tied to Corona. Central Connecticut State University, some ways, confessed, demonstrated, recorded, confirmed. They have 2 Corona brothers, a Kevin Corona and Mark Corona, involved with federal crimes on off of others that forced them to collusions with it. Natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders. Parents of on off parks with the mayor and with a Perone family, and with people with a Kerr family. Also on off Fox Connecticut News and the spots next to them has roles with the intelligence community. That also reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Has roles with, uses of saying things, dropping people's names and things like that in context where, people can't go back and be honest about that. And there's relevance to it because the only ties to it are those things. And those are the people that when they made those fake instances, fake exceptions of me knowing them. And others, they do this not just to me. This is against each age of correlation nature. Measure and maintain self-valued uses of simultaneously criminally foreign influence, positive and negative treatments, and identity treatments, where that identity is the Constitution unabridged, as Marbury versus Madison. See, what it knew that it could force, trick, hurt, and persuade the appearances of justice, definitions, to be criminal insidiousness, natures of definitions, and then defenses of that. This is so increasingly needing at other locations to hide how they did that, which is actually recorded. So increasingly valuing. Hello. So thank you. Yeah, how are you, mother? So I called the school. There's a Rob Rodriguez. There are investigators, and vetting identities who influenced him to pretend that he knew me. And once when I was a kid, they apparently took a picture of it. There are proofs. And then 2 times when I was adult, he walked by my area, which is one of, there are connections between the people, and they will come on themselves and pretend to know me too, because they're trying to they're lying about us as a group. the students individually grouped and together at each age and nature of campuses. So there are fire campuses. There are people. There are judges and prosecutors associated with a Delafair family that recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. From I know them. Those are some of the strangers that influenced girls that they were intimately tied with to make confessions to me and demonstrations to me. As my neighbors made confessions tied to them. I don't even think I saw them around each other, but they used to use each other's names because they're trying to make it look like we know each other. Because the people training the little kids, the people looking over the elderly homes, same names timed uses of the elderly homes for federal rules of evidence as crimes, methods, and acts that have nothing to do with what's the exceptions, where and how they've been using the locations, where and how, for example, elderly homes prevent people from walking out of the places. Elderly homes, the food comes out at this time. It's hard to adapt. It's hard to adapt for everyone. Well, with the economy, so we have these people share a room. When we have so much employment, it's a hard job. These are not our means. So we're not just going to fix the economy. We're going to fix how the economy was employed. Criminally foreign influence, part of a torture method. The people involved with the World Trade Center, you got a certain kind of victim / hyper victim involved with all kinds of medical corruption at other locations, offensively needing to hide life, preemptively needing to hide life progressions, tactical delusions, physical nature delusions, and identity delusions. I'm not the doctor, but there are needs to delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence, fact-cheaping natures, and souls and collusion, recorded collusions, methods, whole predicate acts methods, timed with overt criminal enterprises, child offenders, and their patients and criminals timed demonstrates more than plausible that were undercover police too, because they are also the ones that were recorded involved with the names on off my street since I was a kid, on off the community center, involved with people involved make fake exceptions to know me. One time, there are proofs that they recorded a Joe DeMar and a Ray Clough approached me just for a moment at the community center. I only saw them for a moment at the community center. They were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, repeated confessions regarding that and their roles of West Hartford locations next to the West Farms Mall, and where serial killer's body dumping spot is. That might have been something to do with where they make fake news. That is for legitimate reasons that they have juxtaposed, because they have the news involved also with predicate acts in cases, news identities, where they've been fabricating fake conversations between people with Connecticut news locations, and as people all along Route 3 involved with this through time. So there was like they used to call it like I forget what they called it. There's a place near Hangdog Lane, and that's one of the guys, men and women that were involved with falsified police reports, and with Subby Bugerio and abuses of girls, boys and girls, where they use corners of buildings and streets as names involved with spots next to the state capitol. Involved also with 3 spots at the end of the Borough Turnpike, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, per their theme, where they will tell you themselves. I barely know them. And now these are also people involved with Connecticut boxing locations and the campuses. And these are fact-cheaping nature-oriented predicate acts methods rules, not just predicate act. So they switch names and have been interbranch too. And I want a response, need a response for the Bob Chase who's confessing roles of the extended family member of a family near me. There's a Phil Cololo involved with one of the fronts with some of the people. There's also people with the name Scaloro involved on off the World Trade Center spots next to it with the names involved with predicate acts on my street through time as people that were timed as roles with predicate acts in cases and legal cases of other natures too. I don't know Dean LaPointe. He made the only time I know him. He was involved with various natures of courts and police forms with federal crimes with evidences, identity thefts and frauds. I don't know his brother John LaPointe. One time he walked by me and people made confessions to him. He was walking from outside the cafeteria using a cell phone. And he's one of the ones that was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a Detective Dillon, and there's an Anna Dillon, and there's an Annie Dillon slash Annie Dillon, like they do name switches and stuff. And there are boys and girls that grew up near them, involved and now as adults, with having had time pretending passions and emotions, where and how these are their roles with the names relevant, where they've been prevent me interbranch from getting a name, and they've been attaching me to fake conversations on off the weather police. I never had see when they had kids bring up conversations when I was a kid, and then have them they asked me to go to the police station and have conversations about it. In other words, I already knew before that they weren't going to be honest. I didn't go there, and my family knew they weren't going to be honest too. It was recorded. The names involved with it were involved at the time with proven, federal crimes against my father and others on and off job sites. And these are various natures of federal criminals and their kids that were with interbranch through time with a whole bunch of other countries on and off campuses with themselves. On and off, whole bunch of Thai people at Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on off the shopping centers in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill, along with involved with criminally foreign influence uses of the South Stein Highway, which runs into the heart of Hartford. No, like the Berlin Turnpike. 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike are also one of the things confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed by the people individually grouped in together who sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm in the past. Relative things tied to this and what is actually recorded. So there's a detective Samudo also with Central Connecticut State University regarded and involved with predicate acts with the former director of the FBI, a whole bunch of people tied to him and to the various natures of courts, and people associated with the deposition of him and his co-defendants before a 2006 district court case. Those same names were involved planting evidences with Dean Alfred's son, with people associated with a Dean, not Dean Alfred's son, a Dean Judd's son from Central Connecticut State University, per themselves, and people with the military and the military intelligence. There was a Kolvinskis family that also pretended to know me, made a fake exception with a violet when I was in middle school, as part of their roles. I didn't know all the names that I never saw them around Tim O'Brien or Andrew O'Brien, but these are police officers and police forms juxtaposed also with the police departments where they play word tricks games because they mix with their identities, apparently, because they've been switching and forging names. Not just that way. The branches of government individually grouped and together have, the courts have too, various natures of courts, and of the same natures of courts. Intercities have been having a recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They're going to pretend other, but they have the knowledge that their databases are used to stack illusions, and as collusions also with the news media and the locations next to it. And they know that it's not personal because they won't respond to this over the phone. It's also how they're recorded. It has something to do with the people of modern pastry, the men involved with the girlfriends that sought me out to confess, demonstrate, confirm. And some of them sought me out. And some of me I sought them out on social media. I was kind of a little bit rude because I want people to describe it in the background. I mean, further to explain it to me because they've been making confessions about how they're criminally foreign influenced this way, where they communicate other than they say, and where and how they attach me to fake words and conversations that weren't at all, but they pretended other as news journalists, and they attached little kids in to fake ties to strangers with a principal child abuser that were forcing at the time that way. They were forcing more roles with it then and now. A police chief, Cintron, his family and extended family were the ones recorded involved also years before they put Mazzucato Bakery where it is. That corner is involved with a whole bunch of natures of criminally foreign influence uses of it by the people tied to this police chief Cintron and former director of the FBI Robert Luskin, and all these connections that Central Connecticut State University in New Britain has with Rocky Hill locations in that corner, with names involved also with East Hartford having been used sequentially and simultaneously criminally foreign influence through time too, and the spots next to them. Sick. The 7-Eleven next to the spot in East Hartford that is associated with New Britain Superior Court. This is where and how they put fake things about people. They both really hurt people with all-time treatments at the interbranch locations. Use simultaneously too fast, too slow to get over on proper time treatments. All exception nature demonstration of the same thing. They recorded how preemptively, actively, and increasingly kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finally active progressive lies with complete strangers. And self-out uses of that. And where and how names relevance as well. So a suburb Bajero made fake exceptions pretending to know me when I was a kid, as his roles recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with various natures of federal crimes with judges and prosecutors, then exploitations of that through time. He's one of the ones involved with the everyone's forced to speak through others too. Then they pretend we can't speak for humanity because we hate people or something like that. I don't know this person to hate him. He's one of the persons who has roles with recorded identity theft, fraud, slander methods. And he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he's got the sale of a Raiders jacket. There's also a Richard Dabrowski, I don't know, made exception for pretending to know me with wire crime methods that he doesn't understand. Maybe he demonstrated it's plausible to an extent. He knows it is plausible that there were men and women associated with him and with his neighbors involved with this in the background, because they're making me pretty. There's also Sal Civiello. I don't know him. They made fake exception off campus one time. Real quick, I had no response because and we had no communications too. One time I went to one Cub Scout meeting. So now they have all their kids and everything involved with the intelligence community all along Two Rod Highway and streets next to it, who took roles with time planting illusions on my street too. And then as ones who went in the background with the campuses doing this. Has something to do with their roles with the people who run the parks and who run the security for the elderly homes. So they have a problem if they want to hold on to pretend they could speak for the name of the executive branch, the judicial branch, or the political branch. If we speak using this method, not by accident, the breaching method knew that it could exploit this. So Weathersfield, there's a park near me, and the people involved with the mayors and police forums that made fake exceptions, pretending like they probably took a picture of me when there was a Mark Violet, a Jocelyn Glavinskas, and a Danielle Perron. They were involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Behind my back, I didn't even have a class with them. And their neighbors. I mean, their roles on off campuses with identity thefts, timed, uses of spots next to them, as the people involved also through time with the courts and judges, and people involved with the body, the spot next to the where they said they found the serial killers' bodies, but that serial killer and themselves has roles and had roles with that spot in West Hartford, and involved also with their roles with federal evidences crimes that involved the community center through time and timed identity theft, fraud, slanders instances, where how they locked people, criminally foreign influence branches of government, used remotely, incapable of handling the details, where and how increasingly criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and identity treatments and sequence treatments and the value treatments, where the value of that is the subject, is being denied because they have value systems still applied. Criminally foreign influence, our founders communicated for us to discern that and how and why everyone was forced to entertain economic treatments, pretending they're positive, they could speak for positive, negative, or identity when they were wearing how they were still in collusion against our founders too, everyone against everyone, to sense who's going to make short words, who's not going to blame other things, others or selves for what the breaching method is increasingly demonstrated. Value as nature / nature as value. Positive to discern. That is also positive unto itself. Because that's also how we can defend that which hasn't even been known since some ancient times. How to use our differences to reveal the hyper difference. That's what it's all about. Boxing. I teach us things belong. 10, come here, come home. Humanity. YouTuber Anthony Wall. So has something to do with that guy that Subby Bajerial stole speaker box from. He and Jeremy Grohl said something about that place. There's land behind the Two Rod Highway. I've never seen them there, but he said they had roll growing pot there or something like that. I don't know them. The exceptions, it made it look like it. I bought pot from them one time. I had not a word of conversation from the guy, and I was in a different spot. And that's one of the guys, timed then years later, associated with timed with the buildings on and off. There was also a confirmation, nonverbal. They said his name was Joe. A Mike Violet and a Mark Violet. I never had a conversation with Mike Violet either. They had been influenced to insidiously make exceptions to pretend to know me, where they got locked. Roles with the men and women on and off my campuses, with the branches of government individually grouped and together as they are actually being and having been recorded. And this being and having been as actually relevant. So they've been getting away with this, our countries, because they share methods of changing what people say, their words, and making it more and more collusions with fake things stacked into databases, including the FBI, state police, and Wethersfield police, where and how they are juxtaposed. They have roles also with private people fabricating audio and video transcripts, and through the news media that has roles with email crimes too with them. They pretend passions and emotions. Oh, well, you're not going to get a job if you said this over the internet. In other words, that's part of the reason. It's only a little fraction of why it's relevant. Where and how our founders left us to communicate. How about how the private companies were involved with the torture method, not just against people they didn't help, but as collusions that they employed. to uses of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and identity treatments simultaneously. And with the programming, how the programming of the identity actually works, our value/value progression. Value is relativity to positive and negative simultaneously for the same exact reason. The extent that we could discern of identity's function, its complete identity of relationship to itself is also completely discernible. And the only increasing value of that is completely discernible. All exceptions in exception nature, as actually recorded, they're consciously having been employed. So they have roles with nothing against the people of Korea. God bless us, humanity. This is regarding how we have means to discern our country's members here are now as themselves, how nature has us bound, individual, grouped, and together. They have only known voices and selves as themselves as, having been individual, grouped, and together, and other. I mean, individuals grouped and together, humanity's voices, tactical terror from how they need to be. So also, I forgot the guy's name. I don't know because I never met him and I never saw him around school. But there's a guy who flies planes, and they said he plays the guitar, who's associated with the Confessions of a DeMoro family. Or not, I mean of Delaferro family. There are a whole bunch of Delaferro brothers, and their parents have roles with the intelligence community and with other countries, where on and off campuses they put little identity theft, fraud, slanders, and have roles with saying and doing and pretending things at locations where how it can be used effectively, increasingly, better than perfectly, are the time treatments of courts, is then they have to hide that. The quality treatments, the nature treatments, the collusions roles. They have collusions through time. And the sequence shifts are the most critical thing because they have also employed. They knew that people would use truths for lies. So they're keeping them. Oh, this is why we're just doing this for our kids. We don't want our kid to be associated with that person or like that. Or we don't care. And the narratives, the arrays are being employed. That's why we have to have mandated law followed. And in other words, they interbranch, connected, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They change what people say and prevent them from making short words. I haven't been responded to about what I called the campus for, what I caught them using Rob Rodriguez and a bunch of real and real or made up connected untimely deaths. Also, and untimely deaths rolls also through the people that can only counter involved with the same racketeering methods, worse than war crimes. On off my street with this through it since I was a kid, other locations. And I don't know Victor Santos. And in other words, there's nothing personal. He was like tagging me and running away. I don't know. It was like maybe it was because he was like a soccer player, and he was trying to get me to go. I don't know. I just knew. In other words, I was letting kids. People don't behave the way they normally would when they know there are collusions with people from years earlier where they know they don't give you enough of the names and they lie about sequence and they measure and maintain how people are going to adapt, and why and how they're doing that is being measured and maintained too. They don't even realize. Because in other words, this has complete possession over all identities of sophistication / non-sophistication and of the array. The list. So there are lists of things and of names in collusion with these games and with their motivations narratives. They're not caring about the privacy of the kids and family of modern pastry. Legitimately, the people on off Central Connecticut State University and tied to this Fred Cruzet and the confessions of and the timing of the confessions of Alessandro Spada, also as one of the ones on off the spot, confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed by Eric Jensen. He's involved with Sal Saviola pretending to know me, made a quick fake exception pretending to know me, relevant to their confessions about their roles with various natures of federal crimes, with evidences and with databases and with other people's names and with people on off Two Rod Highway and Hangdog Lane involved with the branches of government and their exception nature, all privatized to them, and insidiousness of people's logic A through Z relative to this, or they change that person's words. There's a shock and awe, to use the quote of my sources also are MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN, but I only use where and how they say things that I know are true always, not denying the slightest exceptions, not valuing the slightest exception denied. Because it is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed how the news media and our has roles with people we went to schools with the intelligence community, who are a certain type of victim, predator / hyper predator, where and how other was given to them as the words and nature of the law that is proper at when they were little kids. And so when they're middle school and high school, they were in the furtherance of illusions tied to this, because collusions with it is exploited at other locations. So a Mark Violet, a Joe Aiello, a Kevin Caron, a Mark Caron, a Jamie Caron, and a Justin Levinskis, and a Danielle Perron pretended to know me and let someone take a picture of me in a park to pretend to know me. They also did that with a whole bunch of people associated with the corners of Elm Street and South Dean since I was a kid, with their roles with the intelligence community, with these names. They also have that pattern of roles with predicate acts leveraged on and off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, with people on and off campuses in Wethersfield that have roles with actually recorded, consciously connected, illusions put into databases, uses, a use singular of a whole bunch of different uses of people's narratives tied to how they're going to be. We're the expert on this. You're the expert on that. We have to address how all this was employed. Tactically, delusions wrought, simultaneously, criminally foreign influence, though. So they can't afford at any location the quality fact sheet needs to write. Someone took a picture of me going like that on the neck of someone at the top of the staircase at a Mike Panthol's house. I don't know, at a Mike Roberts' house. That was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Like not even a real part. It was like so they could further lipoaggressions, because there were roles with on and off campuses with the names on my street, timing, uses of people walking by people. This is really what's the problem, sickly distinctly in the cities the suburb slash urban, and in the suburbs slash urban, in the urban, and the exception nature, not just rural. Any difference is measured and maintained, not just being applied, but having been applied to meanings other and or to all real meanings, leaving out what difference is really about. How nature uses exception nature to one way distinctly from all other identities of volume, all identities of program, so we could discern itself. This is about where and how the hyper invisible but still discernible is what we use as one method of ratiocination slash pseudo ratiocination. Not leaving out the smallest finite detail. This breaching method consciously knew. Worse than groupthink. Groupthink is another thing reported by Donald Rumsfeld and by President slash Chief Bush. Groupthink was one of the things that led up to the World Trade Center attack. Groupthink was employed by the breaching methods laws entrenched with slavery North and South America since before our founders were even born, and that was sustained. So therefore, increasingly from that, there was the cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that we know were blamed on other things, others, ourselves. They're doing this now. So that increasingly values other things, others, ourselves blame for it. So that increasingly values definitions of precedents that have nothing to do with legal precedents, but per where and how legal precedents stayed criminally foreign influence, so self-valued. Little tricks with fact, human nature like that. Thank you.